Can a bad season erase part of the legacy of one of the greatest of all time? Is Hamilton really in danger of tarnishing his legend after a historic disaster with Ferrari? And most importantly, why has Nico Rosberg decided to speak out just now? Abu Dhabi, the circuit that once saw him crowned world champion, became the final scene of his worst sporting nightmare. It all started in the third free practice. At first glance, it looked like just another session, but one curve was enough to reveal the chaos that lived under the body of the SF-25. At the entrance to turn 9, the Ferrari hit bottom violently. In less than a second, the rear suspension completely collapsed, the car bounced uncontrollably and crashed. From the onboard, you could see the exact moment in which the car stopped obeying. It wasn't pilot error. It was a structural failure, a consequence of a car that, race after race, has proven to be indomitable, erratic, and ruthless even with legendary hands like his. Hamilton's voice on the radio was an echo of his mental state. Flat, dry, no surprise. Something bent in the front, and I lost the back. There was no anger, no frustration, just resignation. The resignation of someone who has fought the same battle all year and has lost in each attempt. A driver who once dominated with surgical precision, now reduced to surviving lap after lap, not knowing how the car will react around the next corner. The clock was ticking. Ferrari had 90 minutes to rebuild the car. The team managed it, but the lost time was irrecoverable. Every minute off the track was one less opportunity to understand a car that changes its behavior between corners without warning. When qualifying began, Hamilton was disarmed at the mercy of fate, and fate did not forgive. Eliminated in Q1. Again, for the fourth time in a row. The stopwatch marked a difference of 0.789 seconds with respect to the pole. Under normal conditions, that may not seem like much, but in modern Formula One, those tenths are an abyss. They are the distance between a top 5 and getting stuck in traffic, between competing and disappearing. Hamilton was 2 tenths behind Leclerc in pure pace, which might seem acceptable if it weren't for the fact that this trend was repeated throughout the year. And because even those 2 tenths in this context are a reflection of a lost battle against a soulless car. The Ferrari of 2025 is not only slow, she is unpredictable, brutally inconsistent, and that makes her an enemy that not even most polished talent can defeat. The engineers blamed bottoming. Hamilton blamed instability. The truth is that they were both right. The SF-25 has structural problems that go beyond any tuning adjustments. There is no consistency, there is no trust, and without trust, there is no speed. The elimination in Q1 was not an isolated accident. It was the 4th in a row after Qatar Sprint, Qatar GP, Las Vegas, and now Abu Dhabi. For the driver with the most pole positions in F1 history, this is a devastating fact. And as the sun set on Yas Marina, it also set on a narrative that had been born with promises of glory. The Hamilton Ferrari dream ended its first year turned into a nightmare that not even the most skeptic would have imagined. The final image was symbolic. Lewis sitting in his car stopping Q1, with his head down, no longer fighting the ghosts, but accepting that this time they were winning. When a figure like Nico Rosberg decides to speak, Formula One listens. Because Rosberg is not just a former world champion. He is the only man to defeat Lewis Hamilton on real equal terms with the same car, at the heart of one of the most intense rivalries of the hybrid era. His relationship with Hamilton is complex, respect, tension, shared history, and wounds that never healed. So when Rosberg appeared in front of the cameras after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix to talk about Hamilton, the world held its breath. And what he said was simply a bomb. This was not a technical criticism or a superficial observation. Rosberg took direct aim at legacy, to the very soul of the narrative that has surrounded Hamilton for more than a decade. He used words that not only describe a bad year, but hint at the beginning of the end. He said this season is putting a little scratch on the legacy of Hamilton. A seemingly subtle comment, but loaded with dynamite. Because coming from him, it cannot be read as a casual sentence. It is a judgment with knowledge of the facts, with history behind it, and with a subtext that is impossible to ignore. Rosberg didn't just focus on the numbers. He spoke of the suffering his former rival is going through. He's been overtaken by his teammate. He's struggling to get to Q2 most of the time. He's spinning alone. It can't be worse than this. They are harsh words. Raw. They do not hide the truth behind diplomacy. And that's what makes them so powerful. Because if there's anyone who knows what it means to share a box with Hamilton, it is Nico Rosberg. And what he is saying, in essence, is that the Lewis of today is nothing like the Lewis of before. But the most interesting thing is not only what Rosberg said, but what he hinted at. That even being the greatest, even with 7 titles and more than 100 victories, there is an invisible line that separates greatness from decadence. And that Hamilton is unknowingly flirting with her. Because in this sport, memory is short, and the last images weigh as much as the first. If someone retires amid defeats, abandonments, and disastrous classifications, it is very easy for history to be written with a bitter taste. Rosberg also went beyond sports. He analyzed Hamilton's body language, his tone of voice, the way you handle the wheel. He talked about micro-corrections, hesitation in the accelerator, delay in steering inputs. Minimal details that reveal a driver who no longer trusts either his car or himself. And here's the key difference. He didn't say Hamilton is old. He didn't say he's lost talent. He said he is trapped in an environment that is disfiguring him as a competitor. A pilot who still has the ability, but who is being consumed from the inside by the technical and emotional context. And that, according to Rosberg, is what is truly dangerous. Because this is not just a bad year. It's not a streak of bad luck. It's a perfect storm. A defective car, a team with erratic steering, and a driver who, for the first time in a long time, seems human. Make mistakes. Lose confidence. He resigns. And when that happens, even the greatest can see their legend tarnished. Rosberg's words must be understood as something deeper than criticism. They are a warning. A sign from someone who knows the emotional abyss of fighting frustration in Formula One. He retired after reaching the top because he knew what would come next. And now, seeing his former rival trapped in a scenario that he himself avoided, he sends a veiled message. If he does not react, if he does not change course soon, Hamilton risks being remembered not for his victories, but for how he finished. This media intervention not only reignited their historic rivalry. The conversation changed. It's no longer just about Ferrari's poor performance. Now there is talk about whether Lewis Hamilton, the icon, the reference of a generation, has lost control of the story about his own career. And if he doesn't regain that control soon, others will write it for him. However, this is where the important nuance comes in. Other pilots have found ways to survive with the SF-25. Charles Leclerc, although also frustrated, has managed to qualify better, avoid accidents, and stay in the points zones with more regularity. His more aggressive and reactive driving style allows him to better adapt to unpredictability. Hamilton, on the other hand, has tried to adapt the car to his style rather than adapting his style to the car. This is not a mistake in itself, but it is a decision that has had consequences. In Melbourne, for example, Hamilton began to copy Leclerc's braking patterns. He reduced the time between lifting the accelerator and pressing the brake, trying to increase the minimum cornering speed. But this did not come naturally. It was a forced, almost desperate adaptation. At circuits like Qatar or Las Vegas, its sensitivity failed to compensate for the car's wild behavior, and errors began to pile up. Microblocks, late corrections, overly conservative entries. All of that was visible in the telemetry data. And this is where the blame begins to be shared. Because Ferrari has not built a competitive car, that is clear. But Hamilton has not been able to find an answer either. He has lacked technical flexibility, emotional adaptability, and above all, that internal fire that characterized him in his best years. The 2020 Hamilton, even with a difficult car, found ways to shine. That of 2025 seems to be off, overcome by a dynamic that it neither controls nor fully understands. The most worrying thing is that this dynamic has become cyclical. The car does not improve because the driver cannot push it, and the driver does not improve because the car does not respond. It's a vicious circle where both drag each other down. And the team, caught in the middle, has proven to have neither the technical leadership nor the strategic direction to break it. Engineering meetings, according to internal sources, are marked by uncertainty and a lack of clear direction. The car changes behavior even under stable conditions, and solutions applied in one session stop working in the next. Therefore, although many want to completely exonerate Hamilton for his bad year, the reality is grayer. Yes, the Ferrari SF-25 is a failed car. But we are also seeing a driver who has lost some of his ability to adapt, his magic under pressure, and his influence as a technical force within the team. This is not just an engineering failure. It is a collective failure. And in that sense, no one, neither car, nor driver, nor team, can be completely blameless. The season is over. The paddock lights at Yas Marina have gone out. The trucks are gone. And while the teams are already working on the 2026 models, there is one figure that remains at the center of the debate, not because of what he achieved this season, but because of what he has ceased to be. Lewis Hamilton, the myth, the multi-champion, and now the protagonist of one of the most painful falls of the modern era of Formula One. In this context, inevitable rumors arise. Will you think about retirement? Will you be willing to put an end to it in 2026 if Ferrari does not react? Will he look to close his career with another team? Some have even gone so far as to propose a symbolic move, returning to Mercedes in a mixed role with development and transition tasks towards a future manager. Others believe he could make a jump to roles outside the track as a global ambassador for sport, sustainable motorsport, or social causes. Leave me your opinion in the comments what you think about all this.